why don't we go ahead and start with some introductions. My name is Amy Burke, and I work at Bonneville Power. I'm based out of Portland, Oregon, and I manage our weatherization program, but I also manage all of our low-income measures. So that includes our utility low-income program and our state low-income grants, as well as our tribal low-income grants, which is what I'm going to chat with you about today. So I'm going to give a quick introduction of who BPA is. Folks in tribal affairs usually give this introduction. It goes a little bit more in depth, and so this is a quick few slides going over this. So if you have any more questions about who BPA is, what our role is in the region, they would definitely be the folks to ask more questions of. So this is a very brief introduction on who we are. So in a nutshell, we are a nonprofit federal power marketing agency, and we serve the Pacific Northwest. We are technically a part of the U.S. Department of Energy, but we are non-appropriated, which means that we don't actually get congressional funds. We are self-funded through ratepayer funds. So that means that when the government shuts down, we don't shut down. And I bring that up because we have gotten questions in the past of, hey, I've got this grant with y'all. The government may be shutting down. What does that mean for us? And oh, great, thanks, Janet. And that just means that there won't be any interruption in your grant funding. So we are a wholesale marketer, and we sell power from 31 federal dams, 1 non-federal nuclear power plant, and several smaller non-federal power plants. And we provide about a third of the power to the Northwest. We have 142 utility customers, and I do want to call out, because this is relevant for our grant, that our fiscal years run from October 1st to September 30th. I know some can, some folks run June to July and so forth, so I just really wanted to be clear about what our fiscal year is. We do have a rate period which runs every 2 years, and so for the purposes of this discussion, we're just going to focus on this current fiscal year. So we do operate about 3/4 of the high voltage transmission system within the Northwest, and that means that we operate 262 substations. We have over 15,000 circuit miles of transmission lines, and that includes about 462 transmission miles that cross tribal lands. I do have a list of what tribes those affect specifically, but I didn't think I wanted to go into that level of detail today. But if you have questions about what tribes those affect, how many miles cross what tribal lands, we're happy to go down that path with you. And this is just kind of a really great overview of where our transmission system affects within the Pacific Northwest. So again, if you have any questions about our transmission system and how that impacts your tribe or neighboring reservations, then please send a quick question over to Tribal Affairs. We do have a lot of ways that we interact with tribes. So within transmission, that includes, operations and maintenance, vegetation management, right-of-ways within our power services. That includes energy efficiency, which we'll be talking about today. If you want to consider creating your own utility, that's something that we work with folks on. And then even within fish and wildlife, there's a lot of discussions that happen about that in terms of habitat restoration, working on hatcheries, and then generally cross-agency, Columbia River Treaty. There's the education grant program, which Joe will be chatting with you about, and then also an integrated programs review. So there's a lot of connections that BPA has with tribes around the region. Okay. So if you, like I said, if you have any questions about kind of higher level non-energy efficiency questions, then please reach out to your Tribal Affairs executive. Their contact information is your phone number. If you have a fax, that's also on there as well, but I think a really good way to reach out to them is mainly through email. So yeah, so if you have any questions about that, I would direct that over to those folks. So I'm actually going to pass this over to Joe to chat with you a little bit about our tribal education grants. So Joe, take it away.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Amy, for allowing Tribal Affairs, your forum, to plug our education grants program. On October 16th, Tribal Affairs sent out an email to a large range of recipients, all of which are with the federally recognized tribes within the Bonneville Power operating territory. We're currently accepting proposals for education grants in science, education, technology, mathematics, cultural and natural resource program management. Competitive proposals should demonstrate how these education grants will help strengthen the tribe's capacities, help support our already strong government-to-government relations, and help educate about the Federal Columbia River Power and Transmission Systems, as well as the Bonneville Power Fish and Wildlife Program, mitigation program that helps lend to the recovery of salmon and steelhead throughout the Pacific Northwest. So we're going to award 3, possibly 4 grants, grant values up to $25,000. Again, this is only open to all the federally recognized tribes within the BPA service territory. We extended the deadline through to December 31st of this year. Originally, with our email that went out on the 16th, it was only through December 15th, but we want to allow more time for folks to provide us with those proposals. We intend on awarding these proposals for grants by February 1st and no later than February 15th. So we then can get to the point of processing all these grants so that they'll be in place by June 1st. And the performance period is from June 1 through September 30th. So if you have a moment and you can scan this QR code. What it will do is take you directly to our web link for our Tribal Affairs webpage at BPA. There it has more information about these grants. It has the application. It has our contact information. I will go ahead and in the chat, Amy, I'll put my contact information. So anybody want to direct me, because I'm going to be the main point of contact for these grants. If you have any questions at all, feel free to email me. Feel free to call me. I'll answer your questions and anything else that you'll need. Other than that, Amy, if anyone has any questions, I'm just going to hand it back over to you.
And I will also put a plug out there that I think a lot of work has been done on this education grant to make the application process as simple as possible. So I feel like there's some limitations on the number of pages and word count, just to try and make this, so you don't have to write a Hemingway novel to apply for this grant. So I'd highly recommend you take a look at that.
Thanks for adding that, Amy. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So without further ado, so we will jump into talking about our energy efficiency grants. And again, if you have questions along the way, that's great. And if you want to wait to the end to ask, we can have a quick discussion there as well. So there's quite a bit to get through, so I will try and move us along as easily as possible. So just high level, and in energy efficiency, our focus is to provide pathways for folks throughout the Pacific Northwest to save energy, and specifically for anyone who's income qualified, give them access to energy efficient equipment at low or no cost. So this is sometimes a tall order, but we have a number of different ways that we can approach this, and one is through direct tribal grants. So we offer a budget starting October 1st of every year to grant tribes direct grants. They are non-competitive, and they are for primarily existing residential housing, and they do have to be served by a BPA utility. So I put simple application process just because I feel like in terms of, in comparison to a lot of other DOE grant applications, we try and make this as simple a process as possible. We do, because they're non-competitive, we do offer staff support throughout the application process. So it doesn't just, your application doesn't just go into a black box and then sit there forever. But we do offer support throughout that to kind of help you shape what kind of work that you want to do. The funding is also available for any qualifying tribal citizens that live off the reservation. And so if they are part of your tribe or a neighboring tribe and they're in a qualifying home and served by BPA utility, they can take advantage of this funding as well. The funding is also available for rental homes. So we don't discern between if they're privately owned or they're rental properties that housing manages. There's no limitations there. So this funding can serve both if necessary. And finally, so the funds that we provide, we do try and give them directly to the tribe because we really like to keep that money within the community. There's a lot of additional tasks and costs that we can cover with this funding that I'll get into later, like admin costs, training costs, and we would prefer them to go to the community. That being said, we do have some examples of grants that we have awarded to the serving CAP agency if the tribe just doesn't have the resources to manage it in-house. And that's fine. We can work with them as well, but we do prefer to have that go directly to the tribe. So our funding, as I mentioned, does renew every fiscal year starting on October 1, and currently our application process is open. So I'll, at the end of the presentation, kind of give you an idea of what those deadlines are for applying, but also know that it's an open application process. So we accept applications all throughout the year if there's funding available. So I wanted to just kind of give a high-level overview of, what are some of the benefits of energy efficiency. Obviously, there are energy savings that can come out of in installing more energy efficient equipment, but there's also all these other non-energy benefits, things that makes the home more comfortable, makes it more livable, not just for current folks but also for future generations. It can reduce their electric energy burden. It can help fix some health and safety issues, so we have some allowances in there for repairs that we can cover. It can potentially reduce home fires if you give them some reliable HVAC and improve indoor air quality. So there's just a whole host of other reasons why we offer this funding, and we are really interested in trying to make sure that the homes that these folks are living in are safer and more viable. So with these grants, as I mentioned, they're non-competitive, so they are first come, first served. Our overall budget for the whole region is just a little over $600,000. And I will kind of get into the budget a little bit later. But it's a pretty iterative grant application process. So, if you have an idea of things that you want to do, you can always come to us and say, this is our kitchen sink. These are all the things that we want to do. And depending on who has applied, we will kind of maybe negotiate with you and figure out, okay, how much can be reasonably done within this year, and weighing that against other applications that we've gotten. So depending on if you send us an application saying we have $600,000 worth of work that we want to do, which is great, we may just have to kind of parse that out over multiple years, and that's totally fine with us. So it's all kind of a little bit of a negotiation based on how much interest we get. So, but the funds do go directly to you. That is the intent. I mentioned there is no per home funding maximum, and I mentioned that because for those folks who work within the DOE Weatherization Assistance Program, there are some limitations on how much you can spend per home. We don't have a maximum. There's also some flexible implementation requirements. There's also some flexibility around how you income qualify those homes. And as I mentioned before, we are accepting applications throughout the year. So hopefully this is a little bit flexible for you. In terms of costs, we do cover admin costs. We do cover training costs. There are some provisions for covering travel, especially if it's connected to the training. We do cover health and safety repairs. We can also cover related equipment, which can include PPE. And there are some cost caps for each one of these categories, which I'm happy to go into more detail about. But one thing that I will mention that we've added this new fiscal year for anyone that has to observe the federally negotiated tribal indirect rate in any federal contracts, we'll cover that 100%. So we know that was a little bit of a limitation for some folks for participating in these, so we wanted to remove that barrier for you. Okay, so in terms of what measures we will cover, there are a couple different approaches. I will start with the standalone or deemed measures. It goes by many names, but basically for anyone, again, who's familiar with the DOE Weatherization Assistance Program, these measures, we have calculated and estimated what the savings are, so we don't require a pre or post audit for any of these measures. There are efficiency requirements for each one of these, so there's some pre and post, qualification requirements, like what kind of house do you have to have? In some cases, what kind of heating do you have to have? What's the efficiency of the equipment, that kind of thing. But there's no audit that's required for any of these. So it's a menu that you can choose from. So we offer coverage for appliances, ducted and ductless heat pumps, centrally ducted air conditioners, heat pump water heaters, thermostats, lighting, insulation, so wall, attic, and floor, prime windows, patio doors, exterior insulated doors, air sealing, duct sealing, and duct insulation. We also get a lot of questions about manufactured home replacement, and in case anyone's interested in that one, I'll just mention that this is an option. We don't get a lot of uptake on this because the cap on how much we can cover is I think around $6,500, so it by no means covers the whole replacement, but if you braid that with other funding sources, that can help out a little bit. And then as of October 1, we've also added packaged terminal heat pumps for multifamily buildings, clothes dryers, and then if you are working with multifamily buildings, some commercial HVAC equipment. So all of the measures that we cover are all located in our application. And if y'all have any questions about any of these, I am happy to go into more detail about them as needed. So what I usually say is for anyone who is just getting started with working with us, or hasn't worked with us in a while, our recommendation is usually start small. So a lot of folks will start with just appliances, kind of understand how we function, what the application process is like, and then kind of work your way up through maybe insulation and HVAC, which tends to be a little bit more complicated. So it's just kind of a choose your own adventure of what is your need, and then kind of pick and choose what you think you need, and then what you have the resources to complete. So again, it's all kind of a negotiation. It's very iterative, and we can work with Tribal Affairs and sit down with you on kind of a more one-on-one meeting to build out what you want to do. So that's one path. The other path, typically we see this for any folks who work with CAP agencies. So we also do cover any funding associated with the measures that do require the audit. So if you have a DOE approved auditor that's in-house or on staff, that's great. We can cover the work associated with that. If you work with a CAP agency and they go through this method as well, we can cover the costs associated with that as well. So this was mainly what we had been working through when I first came on, and over time I think we're seeing more and more of these standalone or deemed measures that are being installed that don't require the audit, but this is still an option available to anybody. Okay, so some qualifications for who can apply for this program. So the funding can be used for any home that's occupied by a member of a federally recognized tribe. It has to be served by a BPA utility, and I'll show you kind of that list and where to find that if you have any questions about who is a BPA utility. It does have to qualify as low income. There's some flexibility around that, which I'll get into in a little bit. And then in terms of primary heating types, if you're planning on doing any sort of weatherization or HVAC, the homes do have to be electrically heated, but with the caveat that it doesn't have to be working. So let's say your primary heat was electric, but now you're relying on baseboard heating or gas heating. That would qualify for weatherization or HVAC measures. If you're thinking about installing any appliances, water heating, or lighting, any heat source is available. So, water heating as well. You don't have to have an electric water heater or replace electric water heater. You can also replace a gas water heater. So there are some considerations there as well. The home can be any age, but it does have to be existing, so it can't be new construction, and it can be visited multiple times. So I just kind of put that in there as a caveat since that's a little bit different from the DOE program. I know they have some limitations on how often you can go back to the house. So this is our list of BPA utilities. I know this is probably a little bit small on your screen, so I don't expect you to be able to read all of this, but I'm putting the link in here as well. If you click on BPA customer utilities on the slide deck that we sent out afterwards, it'll take you to this view, and you can see every one of our customer utilities. And then in terms of whether or not how to find out whether or not the home is served by a customer utility, I think that's either a question to have with the housing authority if they know, or the residents themselves, just to find out who they pay their utility bill to. So I have gotten a few questions from folks about Pacific Power, if they are a customer, and unfortunately they are not. So they're an IOU customer or IOU utility. And they are not a BPA customer, but they are, their programs are administered by the Energy Trust of Oregon. Does that help, Thomas? Okay, awesome. Alrighty, so income qualification guidelines. We get a lot of questions about this, and I think this is one of the biggest kind of hang-ups for a lot of income qualified programs. We are trying to be a bit more flexible in how that's defined. So typically you'll see a lot of income qualified programs that rely on the 200% of poverty, federal poverty line. But we also will honor the 80% of area median income. Any of your states, if they have set guidelines for income qualification for low income, we'll honor that. If they're IHEAP qualified, if they're HUD certified, if they receive services through HHS or NAHASTA, so there's just a whole host of programs that if they pre-qualify for those, and they can qualify for this funding as well. So if you have a list of folks who you think may qualify that isn't really on this list, and you want to ask, hey, can these folks qualify for this program, just shoot us an email and we'll take a look at it. That being said, we also do offer this as an option. So for any tribes that want to set their own income qualification guidelines, or you already have your own guidelines, send it our way. We'd love to chat with you about that and discuss that. So I will say no one has taken us up on this offer yet, to my knowledge, but that's out there if you'd like to. And I think when we have these conversations, most folks tend to use their LIHEAP list to initially to go off of. So it's kind of a good way to get started on qualifying folks. And then this is another update. So as of October 1, tribes can accept assigned self-attestation of income. So typically, income qualification has required that folks provide sometimes sensitive information, W-2s or other proof of income. If you all are comfortable with it and you want to offer this to residents who aren't as comfortable providing that information, there is a path that you can accept a self-attestation of income. We have an optional form that you can key off of if you want to use that and modify it for your own program. So, and we can also help you modify that. We have some marketing folks who can help out with that as well. So, if you want more information, I'm happy to go into more detail about that as well. All right, so budget and performance periods. So as I mentioned before, we can cover a number of different things, so health and safety repairs, training, admin, indirect funds. We typically see grants that are awarded between $15,000 to $100,000. I've also seen grants that are higher than that if we have more budget available. I've also seen grants that are lower than that for just kind of one-off projects. But there's no minimum amount for these grants. And I will also say there's no maximum amount, so we do have to kind of weigh against the number of applications that we get. When thinking about your grant, we are asking that you think through realistically how much you can get done through September 30th. That being said, stuff happens, you know. Through COVID especially, we saw a lot of delays. We're still seeing a lot of delays for various reasons. So if there's work that doesn't get done, we can work with you on that to see if we can extend it into the next year. So we can also work to establish a grant through multiple years as well. So it really kind of just depends on what kind of work that you want to get done. But typically we ask, like, let's think through, like, realistically, how much work do you think and how much budget do you think you'll need through the end of September? So if you're thinking of applying, our recommendation, just kind of, you know, think through the work and then think through kind of what the timeline would be, and we can also help you build that out as well. I will also say that we are working on building out a budget template for you all to fill out, if that would be helpful as you're working on your applications, and hopefully we'll be able to send that out soon. But that won't be required. It's just an optional tool if you need it. Our grant application is posted, and I've put the link in here, so you'll have that when we send out these slides. I'll go into, in the next couple slides, our submission dates and deadlines. There's a lot of information in here, what's required in the application, all of the available incentives that you can pick and choose from, and then some guidance on implementation and reporting. So make it your own. Start simple if you need to, or just go all in with HVAC and weatherization if you have the resources and the time. But if you have questions along the way, the what if questions, ask. We actually kind of like those because it helps us kind of figure out what your needs are and then build our program and then modify our program if we need to. If you have questions, you can submit them to me. And we do also have Kirsten, who introduced herself a little bit earlier, and she's working with us as well. So, so you'll probably get a response either from myself or Kirsten. I just mentioned this, but we've worked with about 26 regional tribes since 2009. There's a whole list of folks on here, some of whom have folks on this call, which is great. I just put this out here because if there are questions of, what works, what doesn't, these folks would be a good resource. So if you have any questions, I can also kind of tell you who we worked with at each one of those tribes in the past. So I put this out here as well. We do have a resource called the Low Income New Opportunities Guide. It is a beast of a document. It's very long. So I apologize ahead of time. It's not like reading, but it has a lot of information in there about how to establish relationships with your local CAP agency if that's something that you want to do. There's a lot of information in there about who our BPA utilities are. There are a couple case studies in there of folks who've established and have run their own low-income programs. There's also a list in there of who all the federally recognized tribes are in our service territory. And we do also have kind of a one-page summary document, if that would be helpful. And both of those documents are currently available in English and Spanish. So those are located on our low-income energy efficiency page, which the link is at the top of the page here. I do want to call this out that multiple funding sources are available for work through BPA. So we have the tribal grants that we're chatting about today, but we also have low-income programs through our customer utilities. Some of our customer utilities offer funding, and then we also have low-income grants that we offer through 4 state agencies. So Washington, Oregon, Montana, and Idaho. I mention that because if, for example, you come to us and say, we have a ton of work that we want to do, and we can't allocate as much funding as you need in the first year, we can look to those other sources to see if the serving utility is willing to give up some of their funding, or if the state has some additional funding that they can spend on some of those projects. So I just mentioned that because if you have a lot of work to get done, we have some options. We have some other folks that we can chat with as well. So for anyone who is familiar with these grants, has participated in the past, this is kind of an update for this fiscal year. We did, as I mentioned before, allow for full coverage, 100% coverage of your federally negotiated indirect rate, but we are accepting the signed self-attestation of income. And we clarified for lodging that's associated with any training or travel that can be covered, and the training can be covered up to 15% of the overall budget. And then we also, compared to last fiscal year, we also did make some changes to our deemed measures, or standalone measures. Like I said, it goes by many names. And regarding the deemed measures, we increased the cost cap for several of those. So for example, our ducted heat pumps went up to $9,000 per unit. Our ductless heat pumps went up to $6,000 per unit. Let's see, and there were a number of them. And the link in here is actually going to take you to the update document that will outline all of those changes. And then just the last bullet on here, that we did retire a few measures, so anything that's related to PTCS, ductless heat pump upgrades, and heat pump water heaters, tiers 1 and 2. So, this is just a call to action. Our application is open, and we encourage you to apply for your community. Here are some submission deadlines. So as I mentioned, we do accept applications all year long as we have budget available, but we do encourage you to kind of let us know what you're intending to apply for early. So by December 1st, we are looking for any priority applications, and that just means that if we get an application by then, you will receive priority review and award of funding. By December 15th, if you didn't already submit a priority application, send us a letter of intent. This doesn't have to be very long. It's just identifying your organization, letting us know about when you think you'll be submitting an application, and then generally about how much funding you'll be requesting for this next fiscal year, So it doesn't have to be super detailed, and we can still negotiate what that funding looks like when you actually put pen to paper and get down and put down a budget. By January 1st, those applications that we've already received will be reviewed, and we will kind of weigh how many applications we've gotten and award funding accordingly. So we do encourage you to get your applications in early, just to make sure that funding will be available to you. But anything after January 1st, we'll still accept it, and we'll work with you on what kind of budget we can allocate to you for the year. But we do encourage you to be kind of as realistic as possible, so we don't have to return any funds by the end of the year. Okay, and sometimes, there we go. And then the last little bit here, we just want to call out that we know that there's a lot of really good work that's happening in the region, and for anyone who has participated or is planning to take advantage of these grant funding opportunities, that we are looking for some examples of case studies of folks who are actually benefiting from this funding. And what that does is it helps us to make the case for why this funding is beneficial. This funding renews every year on October 1st, so at least to my knowledge, there's no risk of it going away. But I would like to continue requesting more budget since costs are increasing considerably, and any case that I can make for why this is helpful to the region and these communities is great for us and great for you all, since we can get you more money if possible. So if you want to give us a little bit more information about the folks that you're actually helping in your community, that would be great, and reach out to us if you want to know more.